okay, parents, your kids are going to turn out just fine.
This episode of the Your Kids Will Be Fine podcast is brought to you by True Height. True Height is what your child needs to help them reach their full growth and height potential. It is not a magic pill that will make your child grow beyond their genetic potential, but what it does do is that True Height addresses the areas that can limit growth potential, especially the areas of nutrition, sleep, and stress. I use and recommend True Height products in my own practice because the ingredients are clean. They are well researched. They're backed by clinical trials. Kids in my practice love it. It tastes great. Even the picky eaters like it. For more information, you can go to the podcast website, yourkidswillbefine.com, or go to True Height Vitamins, that's TruHeight, trueheightvitamins.com. Welcome to Your Kids Will Be Fine, the podcast that helps parents filter all the crazy amount of information that comes at us every day as parents through social media, through all of the things that we consume, and help kind of understand what's really important and help us know, really, your kids will be fine. And we're all getting it wrong every day, and we're all trying our best, and we're just going to all keep showing up and keep learning, and it'll all turn out okay. Today, the topic is going to be taking our kids to the emergency room. If you're a parent, if you have kids, inevitably, over at night or on the weekends, your child will get sick. And as someone who practiced pediatric emergency medicine for 15 years, I can tell you that about 80% of parents that ended up in my pediatric emergency room really didn't need to be there because their issue wasn't an emergency. Their child didn't really need to be seen. And about 20% of the kids were true emergencies that really needed to be seen immediately. And I think that if parents had access to more information, or if parents had better access, I think, to their primary care doctors or at least a screening or triage service, I think a lot of those visits could be avoided. But in my experience, nurse triage lines and after-hour services tend to very much err on the side of caution because obviously when you're talking to a parent over the phone, you're not able to see the child. And so I think a lot of times parents were pushed to go to the ER because it was really difficult to know for sure based on the information that was being presented. So I'm here to help parents at least troubleshoot the most common reasons that kids ended up in the emergency department and know when you really need to drag your child out of the house in the middle of the night or on the weekend to be seen right away, or can it possibly wait until your regular pediatric office opens? So by far, the most common reason that young children end up in the pediatric ER, ended up in front of me at night or on weekends, was fever. So fever is complicated, and how concerned to be about fever very much depends on the age of your child. So it's not a one-size-fits-all answer. And it really also depends on your general impression of how ill your child looks in front of you. So let's talk about fever and needing to visit the emergency department and go over some of the more, the specifics about when your child really needs to go or not. So if you have a baby under 3 months of age, and especially under 4 weeks, and your child has a temperature of 100.4 or higher, by all standards, that child needs to be seen right away. Really shouldn't wait. Simply because, one, your child hasn't had a chance to be fully protected against serious bacterial infections through normal childhood vaccines, which occur at 2, 4, and 6 months. And also, the development of their immune system is still ongoing, and they don't really have the same ability to fight off serious infections, and therefore they really need to be seen. It's really hard to troubleshoot those kids that young over the phone, and a child who is developing a serious bacterial infection or a serious illness can look very similar at that age to a child who just has a virus with a fever. A couple important points. Taking the temperature of a young child, especially an infant, can lead to sometimes misleading results. Rectal temperature is really the only accurate way to assess a fever in a very young child. Don't be afraid of taking a rectal temperature in a young baby. It's easy to do. All new parents and parents of young children should own a digital rectal thermometer so they can take an accurate rectal temperature and know. Because if your child doesn't have a true fever, A lot of times parents ended up in the ER in front of me because they have a very young child. They tried to take an ear temperature or a forehead strip. It gave them a number that was pretty off. They came to the emergency department. The kid had a normal temperature. You dragged your child out of the house for really no reason. So the procedure should be, if you think your child has a fever because they're acting unwell and they feel really warm, the first thing to do is unwrap them. Make sure they're not overbundled. An overbundled infant who is overheated can give you a falsely elevated temperature. Let them unwrap for a few minutes. Usually I tell people 10 or 15 minutes, and take a rectal temperature. If your child is under 3 months of age, especially under 4 weeks of age, a rectal temperature of 100.4 warrants them to be seen right away. Certainly it's okay to call your primary care office and discuss it with their overnight either doctor or triage service that's taking calls with them. But that generally is going to be, you're going to be directed to go in and be seen. Should not be taking that child to a commercial urgent care. Children that young for that problem need to be going to a pediatric emergency department, usually through your local children's hospital or hospital that has a pediatric specific emergency room. So once you get to 4 months of age and over, you have the ability in a more specific way to triage the severity of your child's illness with a fever, especially if your child's been fully vaccinated at that point. So once again, a fever and still a rectal temperature is the best way to do it. But a fever of 100.4 is the cutoff. And some other things to consider to help you. One is your general appearance of your child. Is your child interacting with you, smiling, engaging you, tolerating fluids? Is your child not vomiting? And is your child having any breathing or respiratory trouble where they look uncomfortable? If none of those things are going on, and you have a child who's a little bit older, once again, usually 4 months of age and above, and that child can usually be watched at home and be seen within the next 24 hours at your primary care office. Often I tell people, especially in an older infant or young child, and fever is really the only symptom, you can give them a dose of a weight-adjusted, appropriate dose of Tylenol or ibuprofen and see how the child responds. Oftentimes, if the child looks way better just with a dose of ibuprofen and or Tylenol and nothing else is going on, like vomiting, respiratory difficulty, and the child looks well to you in terms of is interacting with you, is engaging you, is smiling, then you can continue to watch that child at home and be seen at the next office day. I am much more concerned about a young child who continues to look unwell. Either they are very, very uncomfortable, they're very irritable and fussy, they're not tolerating fluids, they're having any respiratory difficulty. I'm much more concerned about that, even if their temperature is normal, and those children should be seen right away instead of waiting. So those are the basics in terms of, hey, when my child needs to be seen, especially for fever. Another major area where children were brought into the emergency department overnight and on weekends were toxic ingestions, especially in the toddler and preschool set. So let's talk about the top 3 things that are really, really concerning and really dangerous when it comes to things that your kid can swallow and the things that kids really need to be seen. I am purposely excluding from this prescription medications and over-the-counter ingestions. In general, if you think your child has mistakenly ingested anyone's prescription medicine, the first thing to do is call poison control, and generally all those children should be seen. But let's talk about non-medicine toxic ingestions that are the most dangerous and the things I was most concerned about as a pediatric ER. No top 3 list would be complete without an honorable mention. So the honorable mention goes to hydrocarbons. Most people in their home have hydrocarbons in the form of lamp oil, paraffin oil, turpentine, which is paint thinner, paint remover. And kids can get into these, and they're pretty hard to drink. They don't taste good, but kids might experiment by swallowing it or putting some in their mouth, realize that it's disgusting and try to spit it out, or getting it around their face and mouth accidentally if they spill it on themselves. The reason why these can be so dangerous, these hydrocarbon liquids, is because they give off fumes, especially if it gets inside the mouth. Those fumes can track down into the airway and cause a diffuse lung injury and be very serious and compromise your child's ability to breathe. So if any of those things are going on, if your child's been exposed, especially if it's been in the mouth at all, even if it wasn't swallowed, generally those children should be seen. Once again, the National Poison Control number, which is readily available online, almost everyone has access to it. You do want to call. So that's my honorable mention is hydrocarbon ingestion. Number 3 on my list, dishwasher pods and laundry pods. Why are these such a common problem? Is that they look like candy. They're brightly colored. But the problem with them is that they have these very caustic chemicals that are meant to be used in your laundry or your dishwasher. I think dishwasher pods are more dangerous in terms of the damage that they can do. And they're very colorful and they're under pressure. So your child will put them in their mouth and bite down, and then these chemicals under pressure will release under pressure back into the back of the airway or the throat, and they can cause significant tissue injury and burn, cause swelling, which can compromise breathing. So those should be seen right away and definitely be kept out of the reach of young children. But almost every household, a lot of households have them, when we did. We have 7 children. Thank God they're almost all grown up now, but had several close calls with dishwasher pods. Number 2 on my top 3 things that you don't want your child to swallow are rare earth magnets. These used to be found in a lot of children's toys. I think that they've been mostly taken out of toys that are marketed to children, but they're found in a lot of adult fidget toys. They're often in the edge of magnet tiles. That's the most common form, but they're usually embedded and not loose. But I've seen rare earth magnet in small metal balls, and if your child swallows them, and it's has usually more than one, they can create such a strong attraction inside that they'll actually cause damage to the intestinal wall, because they'll attract each other through the wall of their bowels and can cause erosion and a breakdown of the bowel wall, which can cause a massive intra-abdominal problem. So if they're removed promptly and addressed promptly, usually not a concern, but if you think your child has swallowed rare earth magnets, you got to go in and get a picture, know how many there are there, and know if they need to be removed. So number 1 on the worst things that your child can swallow are button batteries. Button batteries, as you know, are those small, flat, coin-shaped batteries that power tons of our microelectronics, from your key fob to your car to miniature lighting fixtures and lots of other, and even a lot of toys. Why they're so dangerous is that when they're swallowed in the esophagus, the esophageal wall touches both poles of the battery at once, causing a very strong electric current charge to go through the tissue, causes instant devastating tissue damage, can cause a perforation of the esophagus, can have lifelong negative impact, infection, can be life-threatening. So this is a really serious problem. If you think your child has swallowed a button battery, needs immediate medical attention. The pediatric ER literature has been really clear that if you're at home and if you even think that your child swallowed a button battery, even before you take them in the car or call 911, giving them 2 teaspoons of honey to swallow can dramatically decrease the damage and the risk of damage from a swallowed button battery, because the honey can coat the battery if it's stuck in the esophagus and decrease the risk of tissue damage from electric conduction. So if you think your child swallowed one, first give 2 teaspoons of honey. This is only recommended in kids over 1 because of the concern about honey can lead to certain infections in kids under 1. So over 1-year-old, give them 2 teaspoons of honey and then seek immediate medical attention, possibly x-rays, and possibly button battery removal if it's anywhere in their esophagus to their stomach. And then the third most common reason that parents ended up in the pediatric ER were things related to pain, ear infection, throat infection. And a lot of these things, if your child's not having trouble breathing and not having respiratory compromise and is otherwise well, you want to try to control pain at home and then see if you really need to go to the emergency room or to urgent care. So a weight-adjusted dose of ibuprofen or Tylenol can have a huge impact. The other thing, especially for ear pain, sometimes doing something at home if your child is seemingly super uncomfortable and it's really their ears, putting something in the ear canal to block air from getting to the eardrum if the eardrum's inflamed can dramatically decrease pain and allow you to maybe get through the night and not end up in the ER. those things are any kind of oil, avocado oil, olive oil, anything that is a oily substance you can put in the ear canal, put a cotton ball in front of it, take some Motrin or ibuprofen, and that can have a huge impact on pain and maybe keep you out of the emergency department. So I hope this was helpful. You can go to our websites, yourkidswillbefine.com, and you can download all the episodes. Love to hear you can leave messages, ask questions. Would love ideas for topics that you guys want to talk about on the podcast. And we're looking forward to seeing you guys next week.